Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first, technically the second, but it's the first of the new series, the Clips for Sale in the Legal Zone with the noted best attorney in the industry, Corey Silverstein, coming to us from Detroit, Michigan. Correct? I got that right. So welcome, everyone, to the first of many. We had so much praise and good emails and positive feedback from the first thing that we did that everyone was like, you guys should do this all the time. So we decided to make basically a whole show about it every month. We're going to do something with this, the Clips for Sale Legal Zone with Corey, and I think that's going to be the best thing for us to do. So without further ado, I'll introduce Dr. Corey Silverstein, who is a doctor. He doesn't really work on anybody but himself. And then we have Dr. Chantel, who's a real doctor, and, and we could just leave it at that. And of course, everyone else, we have questions that probably have already been submitted. We have a theme for today, which I'm not sure what the theme is, but Chantel probably knows better than I do. And then we have, of course, we'll take some questions a little bit later as far as, what's going on and certain things that people want to know about that maybe we didn't get to. So anyway, if Chantel, if you want to start us off for a second and just let us know what we should be starting with, we can probably go from there.
For sure, yeah. So we are actually going to start out, this was Corey's idea, but this is something that a lot of people have been talking about in the industry lately, a lot of performers and a lot of producers, is censorship on social media. People have been talking specifically about Instagram, but there's been a lot of censorship in social media over the years. So yeah, Corey, just give us a quick, rundown. What can we do, if anything, about censorship in social media?
So just before we jump into that, I just wanted to add to what Neil said a minute ago. When we did this episode that got posted a couple weeks ago, I got to be honest, I've been completely overwhelmed with the Clips for Sale community. The messages that I've gotten truly it's just been remarkable, and I'm extremely appreciative that the Clips for Sale community actually wanted more of this and wanted to see more of myself, Neil, and even a little bit of Chantel, which is probably why Chantel wore makeup today.
Mask on and everything.
But what I did after we did our first conversation, Neil, was I took a look at the different messages that we had gotten from Clips for Sale users. And what I was looking for was a pattern of questions. What sort of questions were a lot of the users having from the first webinar that we did? And one of the first things that came up and that Chantel just introduced us to is this issue about social media. Instagram is a perfect example. But basically what we now have, Neil, is we have a world where a person's online profile, their online, I don't know what you want to call it, their online persona is probably the better term to use. They build it across all of the different social media platforms. They build it across Twitter, which Chantel is an expert at. So if you guys read my Twitter at My Adult Attorney, you'll see that I actually put together coherent sentences now, thanks to Chantel. Instagram, Facebook, Snap, all of these various platforms across the board. And so performers and artists are spending an incredible amount of time creating these profiles, and then they end up with hundreds of thousands of followers. In some cases now we've seen people with millions of followers. And the question that people keep asking me is, well, what ends up happening with one day, like we have seen already, if Twitter or Instagram snaps their finger and says, that's it for adult content, done. They say to me, well, what right do we have? Why can't we sue them? A couple things just to put it in perspective, okay? And just to remember, these are private companies. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, it doesn't matter how big they are. It doesn't matter that they take in more money in a day than the United States government. What matters is that they are not the United States government, and that they are free to run their businesses how they see fit. And they are free to choose what policies they have, what rules they have. And in fact, when all of you originally sign up for your accounts with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snap, and the list goes on. I'm not even familiar with all of them. I think, Neil, you're a big Grinder fan, but I mean, it's
You find me on there on
I
occasion.
can't even keep track of all of them anymore. Every single one of them has something in common where when you jump on, you're agreeing to their terms of service. Their terms of service, oftentimes it's a whole lot of legal language that everyone just kind of scrolls, clicks I accept, and they go into it. This contract that you're agreeing to with these service providers is what controls the relationship with them. And people think that, well, I have a right to my Twitter account. That's not actually accurate. This isn't the government. This isn't like you can go and file an unlawful seizure, case against these social media companies. And so one of the things that I've told Neil historically is the absolute best thing you could do with social media platforms is to play nice and to behave. And when something comes up, don't go nuts. We see what someone does is they go online if their account gets shut down and they go crazy. They put up a website saying, F Twitter, F Instagram, whatever. And I can tell you right now that that's not going to solve your problem. There are better ways to solve your problem and ways that can get your account unblocked and potentially get yourself back to normal. Chantel, I think you were going to.
Yes, I had a question.
See, I'm watching.
So what you're basically saying here, and to clarify, is that one, you're telling people not to get all crazy, like fuck you Instagram when Instagram does something, because that's really just going to turn them off because they can essentially do what they want. But what about the idea of the uneven policy enforcement? So if Instagram says no nudes and Kim Kardashian or whomever else like posts a picture of her butt from the side, but she's clearly nude, and a person who's associated with the adult industry posts a picture of themselves with their dog baking cookies, that person is getting their account closed and Kim Kardashian's butt is still available. That is, not only is the adult industry person not violating the terms of service, but there's also clearly uneven enforcement. What can be done about that, if anything? And I think I already know the answer, but I want you to.
Well, the Kim Kardashian example is probably not the greatest example, because for all of those of you listening now, we all seem to know that apparently Kim Kardashian can do anything the hell she wants. And it really doesn't matter. There's not a thing anyone can do about it. Spoiler alert, look for her to run for president in like 10 years, but that's besides the point.
Different example. What about an influencer who has
No, the point is well taken. The point is well taken. And the fact is that a private company have the ability to make the judgment call they want. They can choose who they want on their website and who they don't.
Even if it's inconsistent.
Even if it's inconsistent. And we see that all the time. One of the things that I'm sure you guys have all seen is Facebook jail, for example. Facebook jail drives me nuts. To give you a perfect example, a friend of mine a couple months ago, someone said happy birthday to him, and he sent back, I think it was like 500 responses to happy birthday with funny pictures of himself. Nothing inappropriate, no nudes. He was put in Facebook jail for 60 days. Meanwhile, this morning I was on Facebook and I saw someone was live streaming a video, which Facebook didn't catch on to right away, of them having sexual relations with another person, and Facebook didn't catch it, and it was just going. Now, what do I expect is going to happen to that user eventually? I'm sure that user is probably going to get thrown in Facebook jail ultimately. But the problem is, Chantel, and this is something that people have to think about. You need a game plan now. So if you're let's say you go on Clips4Sale and you identify yourself as, I'll use an example here with Lulu. So let's just throw in Mistress Lulu in front of her name. And we're not talking about this Lulu. It just so happens her name is staring at me in the face. But let's just say she had her entire brand, everything across social media was Mistress Lulu, across Facebook, Instagram, everything. And ultimately, something happens on Snap, and the approach that she takes isn't perfect. Well, guess what now happens? Now that potential name that she has that might be getting used across all of the different social media platforms gets toasted. She has to recreate her account, which is quite candidly, Chantel, what a lot of users have been doing is they ultimately they dump the name they've been doing, either use a VPN if they get IP blocked, and move on with the next profile. But this is something that first of all, everyone has to think of at the onset. They need to think right from the beginning. What's my identity going to be on social media? And also, just this sounds kind of silly, but don't pick a name that is going to get you in trouble just based on your username. And we see that all the time. Don't pick a username that's something F me in the ass. It's just.
But see, this stuff, Corey, this is like branding 101. Most people, we've shifted a bit in the industry, and you see models now who are starting with, like, I see Brianna making comments, or you see I am Megan Live. Like, there's nothing graphic about that. So the idea here is really more to think about, that they can basically do whatever they want. So because it's their platform, the people of Instagram.
I could probably sum this up.
Do whatever they want.
I could sum it up in 2 words: selective enforcement.
Well, yeah.
That's exactly what they do. And there's a lot of sites that do that besides them. Like you said, there's rules for the world, and then there's rules for that website. And of course they control whatever they want to do. Like Corey said, it's their platform. They can ultimately do whatever they want, and you're pretty much at the mercy of that platform. And if you don't want to have that problem, then you don't go on that platform. It's basically the only thing you can do, or deal with it.
Well, Brianna made 2 good points.
Let's read for a second what Brianna is saying here so everybody can hear it. So she's saying, so basically it comes down to how valuable you are to the platform, as it is a private company. What about discrimination? They can be a private company, but that does not allow them to discriminate. They discriminate against sex workers even if it's not sex work related. I thought discrimination was illegal. Isn't discrimination illegal? Like, you couldn't be on Instagram and say, hey, group of gender or group of ethnicity, we're going to selectively enforce against you. Why are they able to do it with sex workers and people related to sex media?
Brianna, so both of you, the points you just made are spot on. And I actually agree with your frustration, because one, your first comment about basically how valuable you are does that come into play? Yes. Now, will the platforms ever admit it? Will they ever admit that they're looking at who it is that said it before they make a decision? No, of course they'll never admit it. But we all know that that's exactly how it is. Now, is this an issue that sex workers are being discriminated against? Yes, absolutely. Anyone who doesn't believe that sex workers are being discriminated against are just sticking their heads in the sand. But the problem is, and this is where the issue is, what's your relationship with the platform, Brianna? I said Brianna, I didn't screw her name up right, did I? Okay, just making sure. You're not an employee, so you can't sue them for some sort of employment-related claim. You have an agreement with them. You've signed their terms and conditions, which say that they can basically do anything they want with your account. They can ban you, suspend you, knock you off for whatever reason they see fit in their discretion. And you assigned that. Now, you didn't sign it physically, but you signed it when you checked the box and opened an account. So is there a claim? Could we say that there was a class of people that are being discriminated against and ultimately file an action against them? Unfortunately, no, Brianna, you couldn't. And it's unfortunate because, hello to the naked guy waving. Unfortunately for the problem is, Brianna, is that they really do hold the cards, and they know it. They have they got all the weapons in their arsenal, and they know how valuable your profile is to them.
But so again, the question is, if Instagram was systematically saying, hey, 25-year-olds, we're just going to cancel your account unless you're a Kardashian Jenner, then we'll leave you, 25-year-olds. That maybe, though, there would be some sort of case, but because it's sex workers, there's no way for people. I mean, how can that be? If we were talking about a different class or a different group.
Because they're not being discriminated against by the government, Chantel. This isn't the government discriminating against them. This is a private company that gets to set its own rules for its users.
Right, but if a restaurant is like, hey, we're not going to let you group X in here, but everybody else can come in, I mean, I would pretty much bet that it'd be about 5 days before somebody knocking on their door. Why is this okay with sex workers?
I can assure you that if we were dealing, so to give you a perfect example is we can look at some of the historical race decisions about when certain people of different races were prohibited from entering restaurants. Then we had a whole slew of cases which were correctly decided, and obviously that all went away, etc. Now, there's a huge difference. The government doesn't view a sex worker as a protected class. It doesn't view a sex worker as identifiable as a gender, male or female, or as a race, white, black, etc. Because of that, ultimately, again, you go back to the company really holds the cards and they can do what they want. Now, that is not to say that I've always said, and I have said this over and over again, that there is a proper way to discuss these sorts of issues with social media companies. And the proper way is not going online and taking pictures of their executives in weird positions and turning it into a collage. That's not how you're going to get results. But ultimately, if people out there truly get together, discuss these issues, potentially even send a joint letter with one of the trade organizations and explain to them what our concerns are, there always is different routes. Now, one thing that we are seeing now, Chantel, and what we are seeing now, Neil, is we are seeing the development and creation of social media platforms that cater to sex workers and cater to the adult industry to combat what we see as the sex workers being discriminated against. And that's another thing that, quite frankly, I think will make change. The reason why is because everyone listening to this webinar right now, you're only kidding yourself if you think that adult or sexually explicit traffic is not a massive portion of Snap and Instagram's business. And when they start losing all that traffic and losing all those members off to the private companies they're going to start up, if you think they're not going to take notice, you're only kidding yourself. They will. Yeah, and Ruby gets a good point. Tumblr was an excellent point. What's happened to Tumblr since they basically banished the adult industry? I mean, I guess this would be.
Yeah.
I mean, this would be a question for the whole group. Are you guys even using Tumblr?
I mean, they can't. People can't use Tumblr. Like,
But are they? Yeah. But are they using it in any other manner anymore? I'm not.
Corey's off Tumblr.
Yeah. I mean, it also comes down to the one point that you can't go after. It's kind of like that wedding cake kind of controversy that they had. It's the same thing. The government can't do anything about that because that private company said, I'm not doing a cake for you. And you can't, all you could do is voice your opinion. Like Corey said, you could protest. You could say, we're not going to your platform anymore, and hope that gets, hope that all that hoopla gets their attention to the point where they're like, oh, I guess we better start treating everyone fairly, but we already know they're not going to. So the answer is pretty much these third-party things that even like we have some in development, like we started with the NexoCams and it's going to become Loyal Fans. And we have something called SnapU coming out. There's the Quackle that we started, the app. So all these things, even though the Quackle's not adult, it's more mainstream, but these are all other platforms that even the people that get kicked off of YouTube, these YouTube influencers that might say curse words, their kids are like, the kids watching are like, we're not going to run ads on your stuff anymore, which is ridiculous. And because why? Their political view is not right, or they said the wrong word. It's not even adult at that point. It's a matter of they're just picking and choosing who the advertiser is going to have a problem with. So it's really not fair.
And not to put all the weight on the private companies, but we do, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later during the webinar today. All of these big platforms are scared out of their mind of SESTA. And so as much as we want to completely, blame the big companies, we can't just blame them. Ultimately, we do have government regulation in place now that they're afraid of, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So yes, Brianna.
It's actually a good segue, Corey, because we're about up with this segment. And okay. I mean, we can talk about just this topic for the whole time, but let's think about that for a second. So in talking about stuff that's on the horizon, we're all at least familiar with SESTA-FOSTA. And if you're not, y'all can email me and I can explain it to you, or you can email Corey and he can explain it to you as well. But there was a website recently called Massage Republic that decided to close its services or cancel its services in the United States due to SESTA-FOSTA. And this is interesting because it is something to think about, the idea, because SESTA-FOSTA does not really distinguish between sex trafficking, which is illegal and bad and awful, and sex work, which is consensual and people engage in it by choice, et cetera, et cetera. So can you explain a little bit about that, Corey? You know, maybe talk about how maybe Instagram might be concerned with SESTA-FOSTA and then jump into Massage Republic?
So this is kind of, we had a little bit of a development since our last seminar. So our timing is perfect. Chantel, your introduction is perfect. So I've just shared with everyone who's watching now a link to the article right in our chat thing. If you haven't opened the chat part of this webinar, you can click it and you should be able to see it. So ultimately what we now have is we have this website called Massage Republic. And this is what concerns me the most about FOSTA SESTA, because we do have a legal challenge going on that the Woodhull Freedom Foundation is leading the path on. And we are a long way from the battle being over. We have an extreme, I mean, right now we're in the Court of Appeals, where we're really hoping for a good decision to get sent back down to the district court. But when we look at this article and we look at the quotes by these operators of Massage Republic, you have them in essence saying, I want to get the quote right here. It says, in the current environment, we are not sure that the challenges to this dumb law will succeed. So we have no choice but to suspend service, the owners of MassageRepublic.com wrote in a blog post explaining the decision. Now that's a direct quote from the article and direct quote from this website operator. This is more of what we're seeing yet again, where we're seeing operators of businesses who are saying, you know what, either one, they don't believe that the legal challenge is going to be successful. I happen to disagree with that, but that's a whole big argument for another day. I believe that there is going to be some potential success to the lawsuit. But regardless of the lawsuit, you have another business that's shutting down and ultimately saying, hey, that's it. We're shutting our doors. And not only are we shutting our doors, we're being very, very public about it. We're talking to the media about it. We're talking to anybody who will listen about it. Now, on the plus side, I think it's actually good that they're doing this, because I do think it's important for people to see that once again, we have yet another example of a website that ultimately had a good reputation, that sex workers liked, that sex workers felt safe on. And now we have, again, another company that's running for the hills, and they're no longer, it's going to be another service provider that's just gone. This is happening too much. And when I start seeing things like this, it upsets me, because it's going to happen again and again and again and again. So it is very important that for all of you, especially in the clip business, that you're talking about how horrible this law has been, how it's negatively impacting you. It's not enough just to say that the law sucks. I can stand up there all day long and say it sucks, but you have to say why. Why does it suck? Because it took away your ability to be safe in your work environment. It took away your ability to really get your voice heard on the internet. It's an infringement on your First Amendment rights. You're not able to speak your mind because of this law and what everyone's afraid of. So Chantel, unfortunately, here we are now, and here's yet another example of a platform shutting down, and it's awful. It's awful to hear things like this.
Who are people supposed to tell, like, that this is impacting? Because you just said, you know, people have to, they can't just say it sucks.
Yep. I think the Woodhull Freedom Foundation, they need to be reaching out to the Woodhull Freedom Foundation. They're actually footing the bill, and they're the ones fighting this fight. They're taking the majority of the costs associated. You've got some really good lawyers that are involved in this. You've got Bob Corn-Revere out of DC, Larry Walters down in Florida. There's a lot of really good people that are involved in the case. So there are actually ears out there for you to listen to. But if you really want to make a difference, one thing you could potentially do is write a letter. Write a letter talking about how it's affected your life, how it's negatively impacted you, talk about your safety concerns, and submit it to the Woodhull Freedom Foundation, because they might be able to use you as a witness later on, if this case is to eventually go to trial or what have you. Write it down on paper, talk about how it's negatively affected you.
But just basically in sum, what you're saying is, in addition to SESTA-FOSTA not being, like, the full impact of it not being felt yet, that unless direct action is taken, more and more sites like Massage Republic are going to close up shop because they are not willing to take the risk, basically. And that's what people should be concerned with, because there are other places out there where people are earning money and doing business and things like that and creating their livelihood that could very well say no more.
Well, two things to add on that. One, I believe that if it weren't for the legal challenge, if the Woodhull Foundation hadn't filed their action, I believe that the government would have already tried to charge someone with this. And two, I think that the government is eager to put this thing to work. I think they want to try, but my guess is they're being restrained by the ongoing legal challenge. But there's going to be a test at some point or another. The government is going to try to put this thing to work, and so it's unfortunate. It's awful. Here we are again, another example, and I think there'll be more.
Fantastic. Just kidding. So
Sorry for the bad news. Sorry for the bad news, guys. I know it's like.
But thinking about this and going back to Instagram, for instance, how does the fear of SESTA-FOSTA factor into Instagram's uneven policy enforcement?
Well, this is the big thing. The FOSTA-SESTA laws specifically apply to platforms like Instagram. And so if Instagram is not taking certain safeguards and taking appropriate measures to stop sex work, then in theory, again, this is in theory, we do not have an example of this law being used yet. In theory, the government could attempt to bring a case against Instagram, which is again why you're seeing, as much as we'd love to just say it's just full-blown Instagram discriminating against sex workers, it's not quite that simple. They also have, remember that FESTA-FOSTA is in the criminal code. This is a felony with potential punishments of federal imprisonment, and unfortunately for the social media world, this is not going to be going away overnight. We've got some time before we see this thing reach its conclusion.
So how does like Tinder get away with any of this stuff? Because Tinder, obviously, they're using it for that exact purpose, but are they basically saying, well, if two people meet up through our platform and start messaging and go have sex for money, they're doing it outside of our platform, so we're kind of not involved. Is that what they're saying, I guess?
That's the point you're making. I don't know, because until unfortunately we see one of these big platforms actually get charged and some executive get hauled over to jail, we're really not going to know what their defense is going to be. But I think, Neil, that yes, what you just said will be the argument they're going to make. They're going to say, no, we don't offer anything in terms of sex work. We're a dating platform. That's all. We're a platform that allows people to meet. There's nowhere on our site that it talks about money for sexual services, doesn't talk about, hookups. Yes, we all know exactly what it's for. It's, we all know it. But ultimately, I think, Neil, I think that's exactly what the defense is they would do.
I mean, so basically whatever the platform is that starts up, Tinder, whatever it could be in the future even, basically as long as their terms don't say anything about hooking up or meeting up and you're taking action, if you do find it, then the chances of the government coming after you are a lot less likely because they see, well, this wasn't intended to do this, and they found it, and it was reported, and they removed this person and blocked them. So yay for them. They're actually doing what they're supposed to do. We're not going to go after them. Yes,
and to take it one step further, Neil, take a look at the terms of a lot of the big campsites. Take a look at the terms of Nexocams that your wonderful, brilliant lawyer wrote, and you'll notice that we have specific provisions in there. Imagine that. You'll notice that in our terms, we have specific provisions that ban unlawful activities, including prostitution, escorts, advertisements for escorts, etc. We already have rules in place that ban that and prohibit it specifically. And what a lot of sites are doing now, which I am not a proponent of, is a lot of websites are doing they're being forced to do searches. So they're running constant scans of the chat logs that are going on between members. And when they see any of those keywords hit, like, all the different expressions that are, coded for prostitution and stuff. So, so now what are people doing? Well, now people are using, they're using memes. And apparently I'm not quite as, I guess, hip as the younger generation, so I'm not completely familiar with what every single one of them means. But evidently, if you take a meme of a crocodile upside down with a thumbs up, that doesn't just mean it doesn't just mean a crocodile. So it's it's kind of lost. Brianna said even if it's fantasy chat, which is ridiculous. And yes, Brianna, your point is spot on. What then what? You get charged, and then you're left to prove that, oh no, we were just role playing. It's ridiculous. And so, like, Brianna, what you just said is exactly one of the issues that makes this law so broken.
Right. So basically also then, sorry, Chantel, but basically you going out and searching for it is basically you telling the government, we know it's on our site somewhere, we're going to keep finding it. And they're basically going to say, well, you shouldn't be even having it. So why are you searching for it? So your best bet is to just have the rules. And if someone reports it, you go after them. So you shouldn't be actively looking for it.
I don't think people should be active. I think automated processes are a good thing. I think having automated processes looking for certain keywords, content, etc. And then, of course, having a flag system. If a user needs to report that there's some sort of unlawful activity going on your website, there should be an easy mechanism for the user to contact the website operator. This is no different, Neil, than, for example, Clips4Sale has always made it clear that if anyone ever sees anything on Clips4Sale that's unlawful or crossing the line or what have you, you've always made it very, very simple for anyone to contact Clips4Sale to notify the site. These are the sorts of things that sites have to do. You can't just ignore it. You've got to have a way to be able to get your users to communicate with you easily.
All right.
So which you already do. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're on top of that stuff when it comes to, and also I don't know if we're going to get to this topic or not, but someone asked me last time was the UK law with the I can't remember what the law is called now, but that new UK law with the 18 or older.
Age verification.
The age verification, but just so everyone knows, and if they watch this again, we are working with some companies, we have been, they keep pushing the date forward with this whole thing when it's going to take effect, but we of course will be in compliance. People are like, are you going to be in compliance? Of course, we want the people from the UK that are able to buy from our site to be able to. So of course we're going to be in compliance with that once it actually starts taking effect. So if anyone's listening, don't freak out. We will be in compliance with that. We are working with 2 different companies actually right now and balancing out which one is going to be best for Clips4Sale.
The regulator.
So much of this, though, sorry to get all sociological here for a second.
Oh.
She's going to get really smart. I better step away.
That's the doctor in her.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here is like a rock in a hard place, or like a shit sandwich in a shit sandwich situation, because it's like, okay, we follow all these rules and this is great. Like, Clips4Sale is going to be in compliance. Everything is going to be good. We're looking for illegal activity, all that stuff, and protecting, but it's still not addressing the wider social issue of people's livelihoods, fantasy chat, the idea that we can't separate between fantasy and reality, and then like further dehumanization of people. I have heard tale of women who are also performers or clips makers or cam stars who are on Grindr or Tinder or whatever dating site it is that they're on as themselves, as humans, but then they get found out that they have a particular job and they get their accounts canceled because they think that their sex work performer persona is necessarily overlaid on their, hey, I would like to go on a date and like meet a person or randomly fuck somebody or something like that. And that's kind of a terrible situation where we're in, where obviously we need to be in compliance with the law because that will protect us in many ways, but there's also so much more to address with these laws that it makes it very, very difficult. It's hard to be like, we need Instagram for business versus just screw Instagram, I'm going to walk away, for instance. So there's so many tensions here. And when we think about it, finding these solutions or finding ways that we can be in compliance, I just want to underscore the fact that this doesn't mean that it's awesome or that it's okay or that the situation's great. It means that we're trying to find ways to stay viable and safe within these really fucked up like situations and scenarios and rules. Sorry, I like to cuss. That kind of doctor that doesn't cuss.
Actually, I think what we're doing here today, Chantel, is, this will be posted on social media after we're done here today. And I hope that people do see this, and I hope that someone with some stroke over at Twitter, Instagram, wherever, I hope they watch this and maybe they ask the question. Probably not, but maybe it'll get someone thinking, maybe just for a second, and make them think, didn't really think about it that way. I didn't really think that when we took away the online platforms that were pushing sex workers back into the streets and pushing them back to pimps and every other crappy way that they can find to get, work unsafely. Maybe someone will take attention to it. But conversations like this, it's funny when you were just saying that, years ago when Neil started Clips4Sale and no one really had a place to go. And before Neil, envisioned and created Clips4Sale, it's interesting. Think about it, Neil. Think about over the years, how many people, the naysayers have looked at you and said, whatever, just another guy creating a place to go for porn, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, at the same time, though, what people don't realize is that courtesy of Clips4Sale, you have, I'm assuming by this point, thousands upon thousands of models that have made millions upon millions of dollars and provided for their families through health and education and everything else. And it's just, it drives me nuts.
Let's talk about something that's really going to drive us nuts, and that's paperwork. What about business nuts and bolts, talking about 2257 and requirements that records be kept separately? What in the world does that mean, Corey? Let's just make a hard shift.
So no, that's a good hard shift. And so after we did our last webinar, I got a lot of emails from Clips4Sale users asking me questions about how they were maintaining their records, whether they were maintaining it correctly, whether they had the paperwork done. And what I saw over and over again was that people were combining their 2257 documents with their model releases, okay? And then I said to them, no, you can't do that. And everyone kept asking me the same question, why? Well, I'm copying and pasting a little quote here. So I'm going to give you guys just a very, very, very quick, terrible law school class. But the statute, which is 28 CFR 75.2, this is the regulation that talks about how you have to maintain your 2257 records. It specifically has a section that says records required to be maintained under this part shall be segregated from all other records, shall not contain any other records, and shall not be contained with any other records. I don't think the government could have been any more clear on this. 2257 records, i.e., your age verification records, should be in one folder, separate, all by itself. Your model release, contracts, everything else should be in another folder, nowhere even near your 2257 records. I've seen people using these horrendous forms, I don't know where they came from, where it's one form that has both the model release and the 2257 right there on the form. That is, using that form right off the bat, it's a statutory violation and can end up getting you in trouble. So this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about today, because again, I saw so many Clips4Sale users saying, you know what, we didn't know that. We didn't even know that section existed. So when you guys are doing your 2257 records, don't think that, okay, just because you have, you take a model's release and all of our docs, you stick it in all one folder, put it into a filing cabinet, you're good to go. That's not going to cut it. There are specific ways that the government requires you maintain those records, and that's all under 28 CFR 75.2.
Corey, yeah. What's the reason for keeping those records separate, and how separate do they need to be kept? So separate filing cabinet, different rooms, fire safe, buried under the ground in the backyard? Like, why do they have to be separated aside from the government says, and how separate?
Because for the records compliance statutes, the only thing that the government is entitled to is the age verification records. The government is not entitled to anything else. The government doesn't want anything else, and they don't want to end up in a position where they have to, potentially say that certain records they can't use in court because it was compiled with medical records or who the hell knows what. So they made it very clear in the regulation that, again, you have your age verification, and then everything else somewhere else. The everything else that you have somewhere else, the model releases, your copyright forms, all that stuff, the government isn't entitled to any of it. If a 2257 inspection were to occur, the only thing that they could do a search for is what they're allowed to do pursuant to the search warrant that they got from a federal judge or federal magistrate, okay? And all they're going to be entitled to under 2257 is those age verification records. Don't, like, for example, like, don't have a, one file cabinet, like you just said, Chantel, that just says legal on it. And you just dump everything in there. It's got your bank statements. It's got your travel history, or, for Neil, it would have all the, the bogus credit cards and aliases and fake pseudonames and all that stuff. Don't stick that in one drawer. Don't stick that in one drawer with all of your age verification records. It's insanity. It's just, you're just literally just handing over potentially incriminating evidence to the government. It's insanity.
So that actually makes sense then. So the government, under 2257 law is only entitled to this little portion. So they want you to keep that little portion, even though it's a pain in the butt, they want you to keep that little portion separate in case they ever have to come and get stuff, then they don't accidentally see stuff that they're not allowed to look at. Because again, the government's not entitled to that. If the government, when they originally, and remember, again, one thing to note, and this is important, there is a federal lawsuit going on, the Free Speech Coalition versus the United States government in the 2257 constitutionality case is still going. I think we're into year 15 now, or year 16 out in the federal courts in Pennsylvania, and still going. It's going to go for a while. There's still obviously the chance that more of it is going to get destroyed. As of right now, it's, the last win we got in that case was for free speech advocates. Oh, that's bad. And that is the lesson of the day, and why you mute your phone before you jump on a webinar, because it'll start ringing obnoxiously in the middle of a call, and then I'm going to have to hear from it. Neil, don't worry, it's your wife, not a problem. Sorry.
She's wondering if I left the house yet.
No, she was wondering what time I'm coming home for dinner. It's the strangest.
Oh.
Don't worry about a thing.
Good.
So the bottom line here, guys, is that 2257 isn't just 2257. There are various other regulations that go along with it. And if you don't understand how you have to be keeping these records, one thing that Neil has made it very clear: if you're a Clips4Sale member
or whatever,
you can always reach out to me. Clips4Sale users and members get very special rates, so that, because I understand, some of the financial hardships that you guys are going under and restrictions, and so we try to make everything as cost effective as possible. But we have that information for you if you can't understand it on your own. But if you guys get a chance, write down the regulation I just did and give it a read, because everything's actually right in there.
So, okay, what does it say in that regulation about producers and stores outside of the U.S.? So if somebody is...
We talked about that last time.
Right, but can you specify to kind of, because there's a lot of people who are maybe somewhere else or maybe didn't realize.
Yeah. So 2257 is a U.S. statute, and the statute specifically says that the ID that is required to be used has to be a United States government ID, meaning, let's say, for example, you're doing a brand new shoot over in, I don't know, say somewhere in Texas. So you're over in Texas and you're doing a nice shoot, maybe some sort of, strange fetish. Who knows? I don't know, Chantel, you can probably come up with some examples. And so you're doing this, you're doing this, this shoot, and one of your performers is coming into town from, the Philippines. Well, in terms of 2257, a Filipino driver's license isn't going to cut it. And so ultimately, if you guys are in the habit of creating content with people that don't have United States government IDs, and you're creating the content outside of the country, there is documentation we can put together that would go along with your record keeping form to establish that the content was created outside of the US, and that's why you used a foreign ID.
So if you are a producer based outside of the United States and you are shooting content outside of the United States with performers, talent, models, whomever, who are also from outside of the United States, but you want to put that content on Clips4Sale, what do you have to do?
Well, in that particular instance, Clips4Sale is still a service provider in the United States, and we require that all of our performers have their age verification. We're not interested. Clips4Sale has never been interested, and nor will we ever be interested in having anything to do with child pornography or performers under the age of 18.
That's not the question. How if you are based in the UK, you're shooting content in the UK with other UK performers, but you want to put that content on Clips4Sale and you're using a UK, I don't even know what a UK ID would be.
A UK driver's license or birth certificate. Again, with your 2257 documents, you should have documentation to document that the performer and the photographer or producer signs that the content was created outside of the United States. And you keep that particular form with your 2257 documents. And this way, now you establish why you didn't keep a United States record. But again, the whole point is what I was getting at was again, we require Clips4Sale, and they required specifically that even everyone has to comply with 2257. That's just, we don't care where you are. It's something that we've always believed in, and frankly it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, obviously, but I think for people who are trying to figure out how to keep their paperwork and keep their records in the best way, and then also going back to my other question of how separate then. So the separate, two separate files in the same filing cabinet, two separate cabinets, two rooms.
No, my suggestion has been and always been, if you have the ability to do it, your 2257 record should be in a completely different location where there's nothing going on except for 2257 records. If you don't have the financial means to afford that, which is quite common, put it in a separate room that has a post-it on it, 2257 rooms. It could be a broom closet. It doesn't matter. Whatever, but there should be nothing else. The only thing that should be in your 2257 records library is your 2257 records. Nothing else. Not weird pictures of, Neil taking the trash out, not pictures of Chantel's bank accounts, nothing like that. All that we want, plain and simple, is 2257 records.
Is the room tax deductible? Because there are
I'm sorry?
so this is an interesting question, and Brianna just actually asked this, and I was going to bring this up too. There are services, I know there's one particular one that a lot of people use in the San Fernando Valley, where all this person does is you pay that person for like a filing cabinet, and it's just 2257 records, and there's like this cabinet and that cabinet, and each belongs to a different company. So if you are doing that and you have to pay a fee, is that fee that you have to pay tax deductible?
Sure, why not? I see it's an absolute. It's a necessary dues and subscriptions. I check with your accountant, obviously, because I'm not an accountant, but I see it as being absolutely tax deductible. It's no different than, does a dentist get to deduct her costs for renewing her license each year? Of course she does. Without, this is something that you guys need. You have to have it to comply with the federal law. I see no reason why it wouldn't be deductible.
Okay, but what about, like I think Brianna was saying, but what about if it's in another room in your house? Can you say, listen, that room is paying me rent to be in that spot, so I'm deducting some of my rent for that room?
Absolutely. There's no reason why that person shouldn't be looking at their mortgage payment or their home as a potential home office, and home offices can be deducted, and you can deduct certain expenses based on what percentage of the house is being used and so forth. So Brianna, that's a great question, and absolutely you should be looking to your accountant, because if you have a room like that at your house, talk to your accountant, because my guess is you could probably qualify as a home office and get a deduction for that.
Right.
And then Sarah also asked about digital 2257 storage. I would assume the answer is the same, that's something, first of all, is that possible? And then two,
it is, and a lot of people do it. And again, one of the things that we end up doing is, if you're going to have like a database where all your records are scanned or what have you, because you're allowed to pursuant to the regulation, your computer where you keep these records, guess what? Should be in a room in itself, not hooked up with all of your personal finance record, personal collection of porn, any sort of, weird, whatever you're into, it's like, hey, we don't, no discriminating against what anybody wants to do in their private time. But again, everything should be kept separate. I can't stress that point enough. And it's one of the, after the first webinar we did, I had over 15 questions about the same thing, the same question. And I was just blown away, which is why I wanted to talk about it today.
That's awesome. All right. I think we're coming up on the time. We've sort of been going through people's questions as we went. Somebody is raising, perhaps there could be a template form available on Clips4Sale for overseas producers to use in conjunction with the 2257 form. Is a template for model releases already available? Somebody's asking about that.
Not anymore. Okay, so that's a great question, and I'm going to protect Neil from himself on this one. Neil is a guy that always wants everything about him has been, I want to help the producers. Most of you know, Neil actually shares his personal cell phone with anybody on Clips4Sale because he likes talking to people on Clips4Sale. But here's the deal. With regard to Clips4Sale specifically putting up legal contracts for its users to use, it's, damn it, man. Will you tell your wife I'm on the way? The problem that we have is that I'm not letting Neil do that anymore because it's a bad practice for us to be giving out potential legal forms. Legal forms are what get people into trouble. A form can't just be a form. There's so many things that are going to change based on where you are, what location you're in, what law applies, what sort of content you're shooting. There's so many things that'll change. So Brianna, to answer your question, if it's one thing that you're looking for, like an example, quote unquote, don't use stuff like that. That's what we've been seeing people getting into trouble with. That's where we're seeing have documentation that they take a form, they don't use it right. That's not helpful. You can always shoot me an email. I've said this 1,000 times. Any Clips4Sale user can always reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to help them out. No, Brianna, do not use generic forms. Generic forms are a disaster waiting to happen. So yes, prior to Clips4Sale did have some samples on the website, but we're not doing that anymore.
Right. So don't blame me. That's Corey's decision, and I support the legal decision that he made to remove it, and it's fine. And I do understand, and people can easily Google for examples. The best thing to do is have one written up for you by an attorney like Corey, and just basically say, this is for me and my company. It's written specifically for you. And this way you don't have to worry about anything, and it's a legal document, drawn up by a legal representative instead of by a website, who really has nothing to do with any legal matters like that. We're not a legal,
One thing, something to keep in mind, guys, is that we're in an era right now where we talked about this, and this was really the theme of today's webinar, was that sex workers in general are basically under attack. And if you listen to what Chantel said earlier, there's kind of like an overall thing here. There's a larger social conversation that needs to be had. But regardless, you guys have to remember we're in a high risk business, and you gotta keep that in mind. You have to treat it as such, which means, is it going to take you a couple minutes to reach out to me? Yeah, probably. Will it potentially cost you $1 or $2? Yeah, maybe, probably. But we're talking about criminal offenses that are punishable by imprisonment. And if you want an example, guys, of anyone who's feeling this right now, do you think that the original owners of Backpage ever thought that they would be sitting on house arrest and be facing trials that are with potential penalties up to and greater than the rest of their natural lives in prison? No, of course not. You guys have to, you have to remember that, again, it doesn't matter what I personally feel about, how I feel about what it is you guys are doing. It doesn't matter what Chantel feels from a social standpoint or what Neil thinks. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we live in a world right now where sex workers are under attack, and we have to, you gotta plan accordingly. You gotta be safe.
Speaking of attack, one question has popped up. Talking about traveling to XBiz Miami and CamCon, excuse me. Sex workers attending the event and going through U.S. Customs. Apparently, lots of people are blocked at customs. Recommendations? Is that possible?
First of all, when you're traveling from outside of the country and you disclose that you're going to a trade show, you say it's an internet conference. You're traveling to a trade show. It's an internet networking conference. I don't know why you would ever get into a discussion about the specific nature of the conference. That would actually be very rare. I've heard people, what's funny, guys? and I know all you guys are tech wizards, I've muted my phone now 3 times, and no matter how many times I mute my phone, it keeps doing that. So does anyone know like why it's doing that?
Because you have to turn the little button on the side to quiet.
I did. I put it to orange. Can you see it?
You did turn it to orange.
I
It's
just,
not.
it
That
just
must be a different phone in your, you have that other phone you use for the other people.
oh, that phone.
Yeah.
That's this phone.
Oh, that one, yeah. You can't carry that one around with you?
No, not anymore. I used to have this huge one,
Oh, yeah, back in the day.
big antenna.
Focus on the response.
Well, the phone thing was more interesting. All right, so we're back to the response. An app in your phone may be turned on. I think Sarah's probably right. Sarah knows these things better than everybody else.
Brianna said that too, but I didn't want to interrupt you to distract you from the customs response.
I've been trying to hire Sarah away from Neil for 15 years. I've offered her everything. She's, you know what she said to me the other day? I said to her, Sarah, I'll give you all the money in the world. Whatever it is Neil's paying you, I will quadruple it. She told me nothing. She said, Corey, there's no amount in the money in the world that would ever make me leave Neil. I was like, how? I mean, what the hell? 4 times her salary, guys. So
I'm shedding tears now. See?
I don't know why my phone keeps doing that. But anyway, regardless, the answer to the question for the person that's coming in, okay, so it said, let me go back to I'm Megan Live, who was asking that question. Megan, that's a really, oh, hang on, wait. Tugs and Tootsies is teaching me something right now.
We don't have time for teaching lessons.
Go to the bottom and pull up. No. Hang on. This is more important.
Do not disturb, but still, I don't think it matters. When you turn that off, you should have no sound coming out of your phone at all.
God, you guys are so
I never had that problem. So
going back, just to ask you this question, who is asking? I'm Megan Live, who was asking the question about the shows. Another thing that I would tell you to do, just as a precaution, make sure that you have a friend, someone on the other side of the ocean when you are coming over, just that they know when you're coming, when you're arriving, when to expect you. So if for some reason you don't arrive, they know something might possibly have gone wrong. Another thing you guys can do is I am always available. I actually get calls like this during show season from people stuck at airports. If you get stopped and hassled by customs, law enforcement, you always have the right to say, hey, I have my lawyer's telephone number on my phone. I'd like to make a call to him before I answer any further questions, anything to that nature. You're always more than welcome to do that. You can contact me on Twitter, Skype, WhatsApp, Telegram. I can't say Grindr anymore because Neil told me I had to get rid of it. You know, I can't do any of that. Or you can just use a can with a rope on one end and the can on the other. Does anyone know? But no, guys, seriously, that's an interesting question, but be very careful. Oh, Brianna wants a job now.
You can Brianna will take the 4 times salary, I'm sure.
Clear everything out of your. Yes, that's another thing. Before you travel, clear your phone out. Clear your phone. Make sure you have a password on your phone, guys. We actually, you know what's funny? We just had a case. Like that. And forgive me, that now, who was it that asked that question, Chantel?
I am Megan Live.
I am Megan Live. You are an absolute genius, and I'll tell you why. Because we just had someone come over. They came over through the airport. It was in Jersey. They got stopped, and what they did was they took the person's phone who didn't have a password on it, and without a password, they didn't feel they needed a warrant, and they started going through the person's phone real quick to see the last calls they made and so forth. Always have a password on your phone. Don't forget. Always password on your phone. What's that?
Who doesn't have a password on their phone? Oh my goodness.
Joking, right? I could walk.
Samantha, put a password on your phone.
Samantha G doesn't. I know Neil doesn't because I've been sending him inappropriate pictures the entire time, and I hacked his phone. That's why his wife keeps calling me and says, "What the hell?"
Why do you have pictures of my husband like that, Corey? That's what she's asking you.
Very, very complicated question, but that is a great question. And I think, for those of you who are, coming over, you guys are Clips for Sale. Make sure you touch base with Darius and Sarah and Neil when you're coming over. Let them know what shows you're going to and such, because I know they're always looking to hook up with you guys to say hello and talk to you in person. So
yeah, don't forget we have Portland. Portland's coming up in June 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever. So I don't know if Corey's going to that. I know Dr. Chantel will be there, but you could definitely come to the booth if you have questions. Obviously, not legal questions. We can answer what we can, but anything legal, you should definitely contact Corey directly. But we are going to be at the show in Portland. Chantel will be at XBiz in Miami. I believe Becky will be down there, and Corey also will be at XBiz Miami. So you guys can reach out to them there as well. And what else we got there, Chantel? Anything else exciting?
I'm doing something cool for any Clips for Sale users, members, anything. Free consultations. If you're coming to XBiz Miami and you're a Clips for Sale customer, all you got to do is either shoot me an email, shoot me a message, whatever. Make sure you tell me that you're with Clips for Sale, and there's absolutely no charge. We'll sit down in private, talk about your legal concerns and what have you. This is a courtesy that I do for Neil, and I'm sure you'll see Chantel and I kind of wandering around the show. We'll kind of be walking around like lost, like not knowing where we are, because it's generally what we do with these things. One thing,
go ahead.
What I'd like you to do, Chantel, if you can, because I know we're running out of time, is maybe talk to everyone about how this is the first of many and how Neil and I are planning on doing this every month, and talk about when the next one's going to be and such, because I don't know when it is.
Yes, I was going to actually touch base on that, but Chantel can if you want to. I know June 18th, I believe, is the next. It's also, I believe, a Tuesday at 4 o'clock. They're always probably going to be around 4 o'clock, and we're trying to do them always on a Tuesday or Monday, depending on what's going on. So topics will be listed in the admin ahead of time as far as what we're going to discuss. You'll also be able to submit questions ahead of time. You could obviously come in live and chat, go into the chat and ask things if we don't get to them. And if we have time, we can try to grab some things that you did want to talk about. So yeah, every month we're going to do these, just in case anyone was asking, like, is there going to be another one? Yes, there will be many. We are trend setting with something that nobody's doing on the internet, and that is bringing the attorney to you and making you a part of this entire process as far as what's the state of the industry, what are we doing, how can I get help legal, why is Clips for Sale so great? Because we do these things for you. Easy reasons for you. That's it.
Totally easy. And you guys, if you look at the chat right now, Sarah has posted the information for the next legal webinar. And also in the back end of Clips for Sale, there is a form. If y'all want to submit questions, but maybe you don't want to put them in the chat, or maybe you just want to keep them private for whatever reason, I will get those questions and I will read them during the thing, but I will keep them private for you. So that way you can ask your question and you can ask Corey. But again, that way, you don't have to have your name out there or whatever it is that you need. And at XBiz Miami on the Thursday during the show, I'm actually doing a bullying and like cyberbullying and how to manage trolls seminar. And there's going to be a lot of really interesting performers and models and producers there to talk about their tactics as well. So that's a good example or a good opportunity to get to meet some other people and hear tactics and tips about how to deal with that sort of online nonsense. If you're going to XBiz Miami and you want to hang out and see me in person. Also, Corey will be there because.
Right.
And
also, Becky's going to be doing, I believe, on a panel to represent Clips for Sale for, I don't know if it's like the state of industry or something to do with clips. So you'll see Becky the Sabra. And yeah, and if you want to talk to her, Becky's very knowledgeable as far as Clips for Sale. She's been in the industry probably as long as I have, and she's very, very knowledgeable, very easy to approach, very easy to talk to. She could answer a lot of questions for you as well if you're down in XBiz Miami.
Well, first of all, no one's been in the industry as long as you have, Neil. That's just not possible.
Wow.
Secondly, what is with you in last names, man? Now today it's Becky's name you butchered. Why does she deserve it?
Well, sometimes it's the way it is. I don't know. I see it. I think it's French. I don't know.
For those of you who's asking, Chantel just posted my Twitter handle, my email handle. Also, I have a website that's only dedicated to my adult clientele. It's myadultattorney.com. Yes, I came up with that name all by myself.
Clever.
Don't you think?
I think so.
I thought it was pretty good. But guys, what you did between
wrap it up.
Chantel says wrap it up. What we did between the last webinar and today is do what you guys did last time. Seriously, I really was blown away with all the questions and stuff. Tell me what you guys want us to talk about next time. I didn't pick these topics today just out of thin air. I picked them based on what you guys have been telling me. I promise you that we will do the same thing. This is something that Neil and I really believe in, and Chantel is someone that
I also believe in this.
Just Neil and Corey believe in it.
Neil and Corey believe in it. Chantel's like sort of starting to believe in it, because if you guys watch the video from last week, she didn't wear makeup and today she did. So you can see that suddenly she's believing a lot more. Next week, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to get Sarah to turn her camera on too.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Next month.
Next month. So, I mean, this is going to be like the biggest deal ever. It's going to be Sarah's big reveal.
And Darius too.
Darius has been sitting there quietly the whole time, probably doing unthinkable things.
Probably. So, okay, I should wrap it up. Yes, is that what you want me to do? Okay. So I just wanted to say a big thank you, of course, to Corey Silverstein, attorney at large, the best attorney in the industry. I'm trying to think of some good slogans for you, but I don't want to butcher anything about it. But the darndest from Detroit. That's Justice has a name. That's what it says, right? I remember, and it's Corey Silverstein. So anybody, again, I hope you join us again. Thanks for joining us for this one, for the first Clips for Sale Legal Zone with Neil, Corey, Dr. Chantel, and we just want to say thank you again, and we will see you all again next month. And, of course, stay tuned for any other webinars that I do, the one-on-one in the clip zones with you, one-on-one, which is really nice. So I get to talk to you directly about your store and about how you can make more money, the different ways you can do. We also do other webinars on different topics that don't involve Corey, unfortunately. I know it should always be about Corey, but we can't always do that. But we will have other things coming up. Check your admin. There'll be broadcast messages. So thank you all again for coming, and peace out.